Breaking news, breaking news, breaking news. A Sean Combs verdict is in. A Sean Combs verdict is in. Well, guys, a verdict is in, but not fully. Not fully. I'm going to tell you what they have come up with, and it's almost heartbreaking. Sean Combs' trial jury says it has 4 verdicts decided, but none on racketeering charge. So we're looking at, four verdicts decided. And a partial verdict has been reached in the Sean Diddy Combs trial. The jury has reached a verdict on 4 out of 5 counts, but they are unable to reach a unanimous decision on the racketeering conspiracy charge. The judge has instructed them to continue deliberating on that remaining count. Wow. Wow. This is crazy to me. Crazy. Specifically, the jury has found Mr. Combs guilty on 2 counts of trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, and 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. However, they weren't able to agree on the racketeering conspiracy charge. The judge has told them to keep deliberating on that count. And I will keep you updated. It feels like my heart is breaking for the kids. For his mother. Wow. Crazy. It's crazy. But you did all that crime, Diddy. You did that crime. Allegedly, you did that crime. And 12 juries are now finding you guilty. So if they find him guilty of the RICO, they can take his empire, leaving the family with nothing out of everything he built. Everything he built. Gone. Gone. You worked so hard and it's all gone. I felt bad when I can't recover my lifestyle and fashion tea channel. Oh my goodness. I would pass out if this were me. Shout out to Law and Crime. Let's take a listen real quick.
Update. I have to read it for you one last time. There is an update. Judge Arun Subramanian says that we have reached a verdict. The jury has reached a verdict on counts 2, 3, 4, and 5, unable to reach a verdict on count 1, as we have jurors on each side. How should we respond? Philip Dubé, I'm going to throw you right away. What does that mean for count 1? Is that a hung jury?
It means a couple of, yes, absolutely. It means they are deadlocked. They're not unanimous. But under the federal rules of criminal procedure, the court can accept the partial verdict and make them resume deliberations on that outstanding count. And if they still are deadlocked, the court can give them what's called the dynamite charge and basically encourage them to listen to one another, go back, re-review the evidence, don't have fixed views about it, keep an open mind, yada, yada, yada. And if after that they cannot reach a verdict, the court can declare a mistrial on the hung count. And depending on the split, the U.S. Attorney's Office will decide if they will retry him on that count. My gut says that it is guilty on all those counts and they're hung on the RICO charge.
This is heavy. This potential verdict on 4 of the 5 5 counts. I do have another update before I go to Adante. This is Maureen Comey, Assistant U.S. Attorney. She says, we are preparing a modified Allen charge. Mark Agnifilo says, we propose you tell them to continue deliberating and that you not take the partial verdict. No modified Allen charge. Now, the judge says, would the defense request I bring the jury out to say that? Okay, ongoing. Agnifilo says, after conferring with Combs, he says, yes. So here's what the judge says. He says, okay, email me your proposals, each side. I'll wait. I could give a modified Allen charge, or at some point, I could tell them they could return a partial verdict. Email me, I'll wait. Okay, a lot to digest. Can you explain to me the Allen charge situation, Adante?
Sure. The Allen charge is, as I mentioned before, that's an admonishment from the judge telling the jury to continue to deliberate, encouraging them to continue to engage in the process, and essentially putting more pressure on the jury to resolve the differences between them. However, as was mentioned by your other guest, if the jury comes back after going back in and deliberating more, and they say, hey, we just cannot resolve this final charge, then the judge will probably let them go and accept this verdict, i.e., the hung jury charge, declare a mistrial in that charge, and then accept the verdict on the remaining charges. And I agree. I think that if you really look at the questions the jury asked around what is distribution? Does it have to include so on and so forth, paying for it and doing things like that? And then they are then asked for the trial transcripts of particular witnesses, right? Then after those witnesses they received those transcripts, now we're getting this in from the jury, right? Saying, hey, we've resolved whatever issues and conflicts there were on some of these charges. And the RICO charge, which to me, and I think many people felt was more convoluted and more of a reach just by normal logic and how we think about RICO. And then the large and lengthy, voluminous charge and subparts to it could be confusing, as was mentioned, to a judge, a lawyer, and much less an everyday ordinary citizen who doesn't deal with the law. So that's not surprising that it's hung on the RICO charge. And I'm sure that's also why Diddy is sitting there holding his breath, because he certainly asked his attorneys, what does this mean?
I mean, we talked about this back before we knew that the verdict was in for majority of these, that all P. Diddy, Sean Combs, was doing was staring at the little note in front of him. And I agree, that is very telling. There is now a verdict on counts 2, 3, 4, 5. The one that is a potential deadlock is one that is racketeering conspiracy involving Cassie. So we're going to go through the verdict form in a minute, but I just have to ask once again, Philip Dubé, what are your thoughts about this one? The fact that it's the racketeering conspiracy with Cassie, what does all of that mean?
Well, the bottom line is that the prosecution has to prove that he was running an enterprise with a pattern, if you will, of criminality. And there is basically a laundry list of various crimes. And the jury does not have to be unanimous on those predicate type crimes that were being run under the whole Combs enterprise. They do not even have to agree unanimously, and they don't even have to prove each predicate crime or predicate act beyond a reasonable doubt. And it could be that some of the jurors just feel that none of those predicate acts were effectuated in any way, shape, or form by force, fraud, or coercion. And that is ultimately the heart of it. That's what makes it so criminal, that basically somebody is acting with like a mob boss mentality, forcing people oppressively to work within the organization by force, fraud, or coercion. And it sounds like one or more juror feels that there was no such aspect to it. And that's just a guess. I'm only going by sort of reading the tea leaves, if you will, based on the fact that they have reached a verdict on the subordinate counts. And it remains to be seen if I'm accurate, but that's just a guess.
And again, let's remind everyone, we know there's a verdict at least partially here. We still don't know what that verdict is. So this is a great time to segue into looking at that verdict form, specifically because Philip was just talking about those predicate charges. So let's bring it up now. I believe that we have it. And let's start with number 1, which is debatably right now the most important one that we have. This is racketeering conspiracy. Okay, so right at the top, how do you find the defendant? Not guilty or guilty? This is the question mark right now, because according to the juror note, some think guilty, some think not guilty. That's kind of the split that is happening right now. And this is to the predicate acts that Philip was just talking about there. If and only if you find the defendant guilty of count 1, which types of racketeering acts do you unanimously find were involved in the offense? So acts involving kidnapping, which of course would involve Capricorn Clark on the instance when the jewelry went missing and she was allegedly taken to do that lie detector test. Or for instance, when she says she was taken and kidnapped, involved in the Kid Cudi arson, the Porsche blowing up. Is this proven or not proven? Or rather it reads not proved, proved. Acts involving arson. Of course we're talking about Kid Cudi and the Porsche. Proved, not proved. Acts involving bribery. We're of course talking about Eddie Garcia, the Intercontinental video. He testified on the stand talking about $100,000, the cash machine going through and it being counted. Was this bribery? Not proved or proved. Acts involving witness tampering. Not proved, proved. Acts involving forced labor. Not proved, proved. A lot of this is going to, majority of the testimony that we've heard throughout all of this, Mia potentially, getting working and not getting paid overtime, but the forced labor also goes to Cassie or Jane. Acts involving sex trafficking. Once again, going to Cassie and Jane. Was this not proved or proved? Acts involving transportation for purposes of prostitution. Not proved, proved. Acts involving drug distribution. Now, if and only if you find the defendant guilty of count 1, did the pattern of racketeering activity include sex trafficking of Cassandra Ventura? No or yes? This is the most important one at this time, everyone, because this is the one that the jury may be deadlocked on, cannot agree. After this, it reads, if and only if you find the defendant guilty of 1 count, did the pattern of racketeering activity include sex trafficking of Jane? No or yes? So, count 1 right there, heavy. There's a lot to break down, a lot of those predicate crimes, and this is the question mark, everyone watching. This is the one where the jurors are seemingly deadlocked at this time. Now on to count 2. We're still in the deliberation forms, which by the way, the rest, there have been a verdict. Unclear what the verdict is. Count 2 is sex trafficking of Cassandra Ventura. How do you find the defendant? Not guilty or guilty? Pretty straightforward there. The same with count 3, the Mann Act, transportation, Cassandra Ventura. How do you find the defendant? Not guilty or guilty? Count 4, now we're moving on to Jane. This is sex trafficking of Jane. How do you find the defendant? Not guilty, guilty. Count 5, Mann Act, transportation, Jane. How do you find the defendant? Not guilty or guilty? And once again, all roads lead back to racketeering conspiracy, because not only is that the one that is perhaps the most difficult to understand, the most complicated, especially when we're going through all of those different predicate crimes, the ones that I just mentioned. We're talking kidnapping, arson, bribery, witness tampering, forced labor, sex trafficking, transportation for purposes of prostitution, and drug distribution. It's the most complicated and the one that people seem to not be able to agree on as far as the jury. I gotta toss it back to our guests once again. Adante Pointer, what are you thinking now that I went through and read through each of those predicate crimes? Have your thoughts changed at all?
Like, share, comment, and please subscribe. I guess we will know more tomorrow. Maybe they can come to a conclusion tomorrow of everything. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I will be back when more information is in.